Okay, so today I'm going to present my high leverage practices by me, Jesse Knapp. So the first one I picked was setting and attending meetings with other teachers and or family about the student's goals in a way that is positive progress for the student. So initially my thought was IEP meetings, right? Because that's the basic meeting that you would attend with teachers and family. But it's much more than that. It can be just everyday meetings with teachers only, or meeting with family about concerns of the student's goals or their progress. So some of the key points I took from the summary was sharing points of view, giving feedback, active listening. And how I would implement this is I would set up continuous and pattern meetings with teachers of the student and have contact with the parents or parent of the student to discuss their goals and their needs. And obviously at every meeting I would want to have some evidential progress to show, so I would do frequent progress monitoring of the student in my class. I think it's important to have a constant and continuous flow of communication with not only the various teachers that the student comes in contact with, but also their parents, because parents have such a huge influence on a student's education. So for my next one, I picked providing adjustments to class instruction as needed for student improvement and progress. There are a lot of times where we'll see in the education system where teachers will teach a specific way and they won't adjust it in accordance to how the students are in need. So how you would determine this is through various assessments, such as it could be simple observation of just watching how the student is following instruction in class versus like formative or summative. I think for me, I would do more formative assessments just because it's on more of a frequent basis and it's targeting those specific skills that you're teaching in those moments, as well as it's more of a hard evidence. So how I would implement this is I would conduct frequent monitoring of the student's progress via various assessment types. So I said that I would stick more with formative assessments, but I would definitely rely on observation as well. I don't really know if I do too much of summative unless we're doing between each marking period or quarter. So then also I would make adjustments to my instructional methods as needed. So sometimes you decide to try something new and it doesn't work out, and I think it's very important that if you notice that something isn't working for your students, then you have to make that adjustment. And then also I would encourage other general education teachers to make adjustments to instruction as needed. So since I'm going into special education, it's important for me to speak with the general education teachers of a student that I'm overseeing. So I would encourage, if I'm seeing this pattern of struggle with the student, to make those adjustments, and possibly, if they're open to it, giving feedback about what adjustments they could possibly make. But for mathematics, if specifically, I would focus more on my instructional methods and probably breaking things down into more simplistic steps, because there have been a lot of times where we crunch things together and we don't realize that it's actually more complex than how we're interpreting it. So then I have teach socially appropriate behaviors through the use of lesson plans. I think this is absolutely necessary. So we've learned that part of a student's education is not just the education, but the social aspect of their education as well. And if they're not exhibiting socially appropriate behaviors, then they're going to miss so much of the foundations of their education. So this is identified by identifying social skill challenges and addressing them through practice until mastered. So how I would implement this is I would heavily rely on discussions with like the whole class, and then also partner group work activities, because when if I'm doing, I would think I would focus more on partner work because then when I'm wandering around the classroom, I can hone in more on that specific student who is struggling and provide more assistance than if I were to do a whole class discussion or large groups. So I would keep it small because, and then I would also pair that student or students up with a friendly role model student, because students learn from other students, so they're more likely to mimic those behaviors. And then lastly, I would praise and encourage socially appropriate behaviors. I really want my students to learn, but I also want them to have fun and enjoy their time in my classroom. So then we have changed curriculum materials and work based upon the student's needs. So this to me was kind of like it's modifications in technology. So if you're again not noticing that something's working, try something new. And then we have so much in the realm of technology anymore that there's no reason why we should be using the same thing over and over. We should be trying new technology and trying new applications and seeing how it works. And if it works really well, that's awesome. So how I would implement this is I would provide various modifications to classroom material if needed, but on just a basis, I would try and hit the three areas of instruction or learning, which is the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. I always want to have something visual for students to see. I always want to be engaging in discussion or having them engage in discussion, and I always want to have them actively doing something to really reinforce the information that I'm providing. And then as well, I would use assessments to see is this material working, and if it's not, then we try something new. And then as far as technology, that would bring that in as well. Like if I have to change curriculum materials, I would bring in technology to do so. And then I thought this would be interesting for the very last one, so waiting for the teacher to finish giving instructions so you can get can start the assignment. So there's a lot of times where teachers just go on and on and on. And then by the time they're done, you're just like, why? What did they even say? And then the second one is teacher, why give clear instructions, because sometimes, like I said before, we'll cram everything into one step and not realize that there are 5 steps in that singular step. So the last one I picked was explicit instruction. What to do and think when completing a problem, and keeping instructions simplified. So like the sentence above says, just keep it simple and direct. I think that's really important. I feel like there are a lot of times where teachers will try to fluff things up or give examples, and then they kind of trail off into something else, when it should just be, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And especially in math, this is so important, because math is logic. So it's literally step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So how I would implement this is I would specifically target areas of weakness in problem-solving methods. So if I'm noticing that a student is struggling with a specific content area that we're learning in math, I would try and break that apart even further and specifically, like I said, target that area that they're having issues with. So that would be like the component skills. And then also I would teach various strategies for problem solving. So if I'm noticing a student is struggling, I would teach the students how to, do self-check. I would teach them, after we have the basis down, I would try and teach them, another way of solving the problem that might work better for them. Or if it's just, 1 or 2 specific students, I might, I would, when they're doing independent work, I'd go around the class and I would talk to that student, say, hey, I see that you're struggling. I think this might help if you try it this way instead. And then lastly, as I said before, I would break down steps of problems into more simplified parts. So, there's a lot of times where we have those steps that are just multi-steps and students get confused. So it's important that you break those down as well.